Hey sports fans, my name is Amy Suto, and I'm making this video in part because I think everybody does this wrong. And this is normally why I make content, is because I see people who are doing this wrong and I'm just like, no. And so I feel compelled to make a video because otherwise I would never make anything if I didn't see somebody out in the world that I thought needed to be corrected, or in a more positive way, needed good ideas to come into their universe so that they could see how they could do it right. And so you're watching The Desk of Amy Suto, which is my YouTube channel. I have a blog at amysuto.com, and I have a background as a thought leadership person because I have my own website. I share my ideas online because a thought leader is simply somebody who has a business or a company or is a person on earth with ideas. And if that is you, you should be a thought leader. And I'm going to kind of explain what that means and then also how to write good thought leadership content. Because as I mentioned in the opening of this video, which is very beautifully stated, people do this stuff wrong all the time and it's deeply ineffective. And I'm here to help you and save you from that. And then also to walk you through what I do as a ghostwriter for my clients and my perspective on all this stuff. So welcome, strap in and get ready. Okay. So all these dudes, and yes, I know that there's women in this, are thought leaders. And when we think of a thought leader, we probably think of somebody who's on the cover of a book. So Marie Forleo, she has her YouTube channel and she has her courses and she has her book and she's a life coach. Atomic Habits, who's written by James Clear, which you might know. He started off writing a newsletter, which got him so many subscribers. He got a book deal, and he writes about productivity and habits and has one of the most popular newsletters on the internet, which we'll get to. And then Seth Godin is like the father of marketing, at least for my generation. He has a lot of great books, including Tribes, and he's really good at using every part of the buffalo, meaning the content that he puts on his blog ends up being content for his book, and he writes on his blog every day, and we'll get to him also. And then I put in Jenny Odell because I think she's a good idea of a thought leader whose ideas have surpassed her identity, for better or for worse, which I'll kind of talk about actually right now, because I think that there's different types of thought leaders. You can be like Marie Forleo, where you are the brand and you are the company, and your face, your name, your personal brand, like that is what you are delivering on. And then you can be like James Clear, where your ideas are front and center, and people might not know what James Clear looks like. He might not really guest on podcasts. He's no Tim Ferriss, but you know his ideas and his concepts because he did this one subject really well, but he maybe doesn't do other subjects. And then we have people like Seth Godin, who are kind of like this multi-book marketing, overall the marketing scope. He kind of in that industry, he has a bunch of different ideas that kind of feed into each other. So James Clear is kind of known for one thing that he does really well. Seth Godin's known for a lot of different concepts done really uniquely in his industry. And Jenny Odell, if you still remember her, is kind of what I think is an example of what to maybe avoid. She is known for this book, How to Do Nothing, which I think is a little controversial, but the fact that her idea that is sort of controversial made such a ripple and got her attention in the attention economy, I think is also something interesting to study, because it was the right idea at the right time. So these people have memorable content funnels, and content funnel is kind of a dumb name. I really, I hate it, but I think that this is a good example. Like I mentioned earlier, Seth Godin's blog feeds into the books that he writes. So this content, these really short daily blog posts, barely blogs in my opinion, end up being concepts and ideas he then explains in books. So if you are a CEO thinking about the content funnel that you have built to use every part of the buffalo, meaning if you have one short article, how does this add up into a book? How does this break down into a tweet? How does this break down into a Twitter thread or a LinkedIn post? You want to use every part of the buffalo so that you can get the most juice out of all of your ideas, because not all of your audience is going to be on the same platform, and neither should you be. But you don't need a book to be a thought leader. I'm including this ironically because the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So Naval Ravikant is basically this angel investor guy in tech, who's basically a really big deal. Like there's almost like a religion around Naval in tech. And if you work in tech and you haven't heard of him, you're living under a rock. So welcome. I've awakened you. And so this book he didn't write. It was actually put together by somebody else. And then Tim Ferriss did a foreword, because Tim Ferriss just seems to be everywhere. So what's kind of interesting is that modern philosophers use social media, and this is Naval's like infamous Twitter thread. It's called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky. And the reason why people in tech obsess over Naval, is because he takes these ideas that he has, which are kind of repurposed from like other people. Like you'll see some Tim Ferriss in here, you'll see some Rich Dad Poor Dad in here, you see his influences. He doesn't cite any of his influences because great artists steal, and Twitter is an art form, absolutely. And what I love about this thread is that these things are infinitely quotable. You hear them everywhere, especially if you work in tech. And I think that this stuff is actually like really beautifully written. And we'll get to a little bit why I think that thought leadership is a little bit like the combination of like poetry and well thought out reasoning. So if you read this thread, and I'm going to post links in the description for all of these threads, everything I mentioned in today's video, so that you can check it out. Naval writes, seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep. Money is how we transfer time and wealth. Status is your place in social hierarchy. Once again, rich dad, poor dad concepts we've heard before, but they're presented beautifully and differently. Understand that ethical wealth creation is possible. If you secretly despise wealth, it will elude you. Not a new concept, but a new way to package it. Ignore people playing status games. They gain status by attacking people playing wealth creation games. Same thing. You're not going to get rich renting out your time. You must own equity, a piece of the business, to gain your financial freedom. So these have gotten tens of thousands of likes. These tweets have been repurposed, have been turned into a podcast, turned into a book, which became an Amazon bestseller despite it being free on another website. And so I think Naval is a great example of a viral thought leader where you don't have his face. He wasn't front and center when this went viral, or at least not to my knowledge. And he's basically a modern philosopher that is using this type of information to share what he thinks. Like, he's not trying to sell you anything. He is a thought leader. And usually thought leaders are needing the thought leadership to then boost a product or a concept or a company. But not always. Sometimes modern philosophers, their currency is status or their currency is the attention that they get from the attention economy, which I find kind of ironic, but here's some things to think about when you are writing your own thought leadership, or if you're like me and you're a ghostwriter and writing for someone else. The first thing that you need to know is that you need to understand who your audience is and who are you talking to. And this is something that I sometimes can't stand when people mess this part up, because different audiences require you to speak to them differently if you want them to listen. So even think about the way that I'm thinking, that I'm speaking to you right now in this YouTube video. If you read any of my blogs, you'll know that I write pretty similarly to the way that I speak. It's just edited. I try to write the way that I talk, obviously with like the filler words changed and with some things condensed, because if you don't have this conversational feel, and if you're not referring to your audience or speaking in a way that they find, thoughtful and trustworthy, you're going to fail. Because part of spreading your ideas is recognizing what your audience wants and who they are. And so that is really key. The second thing to think about is tone of voice. This is so hard. This is hard. This is where the nuance comes in. So after you understand your audience, you need to understand your tone and what types of jokes, humor, and wittiness will make your ideal audience listen. And if you're a ghostwriter like me, this adds another layer of difficulty because I'm not writing in my own voice. I'm writing in my client's voice. And so I need to match their tone of voice. And I also need to make sure that their tone is accessible for the audience that they want to reach. audience might also vary in between types of thought leadership content. Something that you post in Forbes might be different than what you post on Twitter. And so your audiences might be a little different. One might be more formal, one might be more funny. Like, you need to understand that your audience and then also the setting affects your tone of voice. The types of jokes that you make is important. And then authentic storytelling. This is something that people really don't think about. You need to tie in your audience and tone of voice to your storytelling format, how you tell your story, and what is true to you as a person. How can you bring that out in your storytelling? And if you are a client looking at this, if you are like a CEO, if you are an investor, if you're a busy person with like an enterprise to run and you're looking at this and you're like, this is a lot, then yeah, that's why your competitors hire ghostwriters, aka me. And people like me or other ghostwriters can be your secret weapon if you let us. But you need to recognize that being a thought leader takes time. You have to devote time and learn, and you can learn those skills or you can outsource them. And if you're a fellow ghostwriter or copywriter like me who does this stuff for other people, this craft takes a lot of time. Like, you have to be invested in really thinking about the psychology behind this stuff. So it's not easy and in any stretch of the imagination, because these three things may look simple on the page, but in execution, they're hard. And so when we're talking about execution, thought leadership is poetry meets persuasion. And so you're basically trying to persuade people to think that your ideas are good and to spread them and make them viral, and to also come back to you asking for more ideas or investing in your products or services or whatever. You could even argue that this video that I'm making right now is deeply poetic. Do you see the beige? This is poetic. Man, this color palette, beautiful. So if you think that this video is poetic and persuasive, then if you're a client, you might hire me for a project. If you are a freelancer, you might come back to me to watch my other videos on this stuff. So first of all, your ideas need to be well reasoned and persuasive. Anything that you put out online, blog posts, tweets, whatever, if you put out something half baked, then people will just scroll by. You can't capture someone's attention without a well reasoned thought. And that's why copywriters, ghostwriters, people like me who are freelance writers are not just writers, we're also logicians. We are persuaders. We take the powers of rhetoric very seriously. Where there's a lot of like logic and reasoning that go behind not only creation of the idea, but also making sure that it is well packaged. And that's where the poetry comes in. That's where the punchy short sentences that break up the longer paragraphs come in. This is the stuff that sounds and feels like art and magic. And when it just hits right in your brain, you're like, oh, amazing. And you feel compelled to share and share that with somebody else. And that's the difference between an everyday piece of information versus poetry. So if you're just sharing everyday information, people are not going to share that, or not going to be inspired by that, or move to take action to invest in your company or go to your website or buy your product. You need to take the persuasive argument or thought that you're having, package it as poetry, and then make sure it's well positioned on the right platform. That's execution. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this on Twitter specifically. Twitter and LinkedIn are kind of similar. And I know that like platforms change. So some of the concepts that I'm going over apply to a number of different platforms, just with some tweaking with the algorithm in mind and things like that. So I'm kind of focusing on Twitter because I think Twitter is like a hot mess and really funny right now. And I've been finding a lot of like incredible like thought leaders and people who are just killing it on Twitter. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. But there's a lot of different things on that play differently on different platforms, and things that can also be cross-posted. So every platform has its rules, its algorithms, and things like that. So jokes play well no matter the platform. I love this quote: humor is the fruit of wisdom, wit is the result of intelligence. If you are a thought leader, I recommend humor. You don't have to be funny, but if it's in your personality, please, God, lean into it. It just plays so well on social media. And it also shows off that you are an intelligent human being who people want to work with, exist around, like follow. Like jokes are, kind of like a good commodity. And so I love this one in particular. This is around this time of the recording of the video that Twitter just laid off all of its staff because we're going through a bear market. Exciting. And this guy has a ton of great tweets. His name's Daniel. Get laid off from Twitter, go home, enter the garage, close my door, sit on my car, turn it on, wait, 3 hours later, the battery finally dies. God damn you, Elon. And he's, of course, referring to Elon Musk and the fact that you can't kill yourself with a Tesla in a closed garage because the fumes won't get there. And then a second example is spinning current events into a clever observation. The pitch deck versus the product tweet. Twitter needs to become by far the most accurate source of information about the world. That's our mission. Nestle at Nestle Death Cult, we steal your water and sell it back to you, lol. I love this because as of the recording of this video, this is when the fiasco with all the blue checks is going on, and all of these companies are becoming verified despite being fake and not actually verified, and have like tanked a bunch of stocks, and it's going crazy. And it's so funny because this is very like inside tech humor, and this is like a tech influencer talking about the difference between the pitch deck and a product, which we know doesn't quite line up. I also think that if you're not funny or if that's not in your personality, that's okay. Sometimes I put out stuff that is just like deeply analytical and it gets traction. So it's like, that's not the only thing. But great ideas positioned well or positioned in a way that's kind of surprising or kind of fascinating or piques people's curiosity, I think is also a great example of things that kind of like hook onto people out in the world. Like this tweet by Paul Graham sharing relevant news and data to support your ideas and belief. And Paul Graham writes, 80% of journalism majors regret their choice, followed by 72% of sociology majors. Now, Paul Graham is obviously working, is a huge figure in tech and founder of Y Combinator, among other things. And he, has a very specific view about liberal arts. As a liberal arts major, I do not regret my degree because I am funny. But, everyone to each their own. The next thing that people love is lists, which is why these tweets that I have put on this slide are in a list. So lean into that. People love numbers. There's something about numbers that just get in people's brain. The 7 deadly sins, like the 10 commandments, like there's something about lists that just like really help people either abide by the good word of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ or break it all by knowing all the sins. So tweets like this that are, here's what 5 years of building a personal brand has taught me. You don't know how know everything to get started. If you're not enjoying the content, others won't. Consistency is your golden ticket. Aim to be a guide over a guru. People connect with people. I think this is great advice for the thought leadership space. Ali has a lot of great videos. He's a YouTuber who also has a lot of great content on multiple platforms, podcast included. He, I think, is a great thought leader. And even though his content is a little bit kind of like a snake eating its tail, he's posts content about making content and becoming a YouTuber, which I think is really kind of an interesting circle, but it's fascinating. Some more examples are the art of the Twitter thread, which these will be linked below. Justin Welsh does this very well. He's basically not, he's more serious than funny. And I think he's found great success on the platform. So if you're not funny, there's still hope for you. And so his Twitter thread here reads, a growing Twitter audience is an asset to any entrepreneur. True. This is why I'm making this video. I've added 219,487 followers in 1 year, and here are the 7 very simple things I said I did. To read that tweet, you'll have to go below, and while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and like and comment if you think that these videos are helpful. If not, I don't want to hear from you. And then here's another crypto influencer, his great thread on is money just a game, which was really fascinating and kind of well-reasoned, and I think a great example of a well-written Twitter thread. But no matter how much you are very online, inboxes are still the beating heart of information. I was reading some statistic that I couldn't find about how email is actually still one of the most effective ways to reach your customers and still has the highest conversion rate of people clicking. And so if you were ignoring a newsletter and you don't have a newsletter, then you have a problem. And that problem is that you're missing out on a lot of people who could use your services and what you offer, and you just don't have it. A great example is James Clear. So as I mentioned on the first or second slide, James Clear had this newsletter first, which has over 2 million people subscribed. And this newsletter that he kept with every day that does the same format, 3, 2, 1, a simple way to win, like three ideas from him, like 2 quotes from somebody else, and like 1 thing to do. This newsletter got him his book deal for Atomic Habits, which became a bestseller. And so James Clear is a thought leader in one of the purest forms, where his ideas generated enough traction to get him a book deal and get him paid to then generate more ideas and then sell those ideas, which he continues to profit off of. It's a phenomenal book. You should definitely check out James Clear. Once again, I'll leave those links down below. But for the love of God, if you want to be a thought leader, write like you talk and then edit. So I do this for a living. This is my life. I am a thought leader, both in terms of like I make videos like this, like TikTok, and I'm also on the front page of Google for my blog. So I somehow seem to exist in both video format and written format. And the thing that I think, as final closing thoughts, I promise, the thing that I think that I do well is that I am authentic online, meaning that I tell you about my life. I make stupid videos on TikTok with different sounds. I'm honest about my struggles as somebody who is a freelancer and also has like an identity as somebody dealing with a chronic illness that I'm working into remission. And I also talk about the ups and downs and the highs and lows of this life, and also what I've learned and also what I see other people doing wrong that I want to help them. And so I do think that authenticity is like the way that I connect with people in my audience. And I would love to connect with you. If any of this resonated with you, you can call me, beat me on any platforms. I'm at pseudoscience for all my socials. You can message me here on YouTube or leave a comment, or you can go to my website, amypseudo.com, and contact me there or join my newsletter. Like I said, all the links will be down below, but these are all of my thoughts on thought leadership, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions, requests, and be sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you want to support me in this channel. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.